Hello, everyone. Come on, let's hear it. All right. And, and thank you, everyone, for joining online today. Today, we've got an exciting section today around the enterprise readiness for Copilot for Microsoft 365, what you can do now to get everyone prepared. So I'm Jeremy Chapman. You may know me from things like Microsoft Mechanics. I'm going to be joined by some rock stars in the team, Ashish and Ramesh. They're going to show some amazing demos and also get into some information that's brand new that you've never seen before. So let's get started. So some of the topics that we're going to cover today: data security and compliance. What does it mean in the era of Copilot? Privacy and data residency, important things when you think about the rollout of infrastructure globally. How you can prepare for Copilot, the admin topics. What you can do in IT to get everyone ready, get your information ready. And then some resources that you can use once you do head back to your day jobs to be able to get prepared and adopt and deploy Copilot at scale. If we have some time at the end, we'll also have some Q&A. If not, we've got some great resources upstairs on the 5th floor that you can go to where you can ask all the experts any questions that you have after this. So let's talk about preparing for AI. So first thing is, you're going to want to make sure that you've got a plan in terms of the goals for the organization, what you want to actually achieve with generative AI and Copilot. What are your pain points? What are you trying to solve? Are you trying to save time, speed up processes? What are your current capabilities around AI? You might be already generating generative AI using Azure tools or other tools. So what are you doing now? What are the current capabilities you have there? And also, from an adoption standpoint, what can you do now to get ready those teams to be able to broadly deploy it and get the value out of Copilot? Now, the last two items here are the ones that we're going to spend most of the time on today. So data strategy, what does that mean? So you've probably heard you don't want to be over-permissioning users for information. There's a concept that we use called retrieval augmented generation, which basically searches for information in the Microsoft Graph, finds that, uses that to present to a large language model. And you want to make sure that people have the right level of permissioning in place for this, because basically, the better the data going in, the better the data will be going out of your prompts into your responses. Also, resources and adoption readiness, making sure that you have all the tools and the things to measure adoption and get users excited about and using and helping other users adopt Copilot. All right, so one of the important things that we heard from Gartner was basically that you have to make sure that you're working with someone that you trust in terms of data protection, privacy, application security, the filtering processes that go in and out of. There's a pre and a post-processing step that goes in and out of the large language model that we're going to talk about as part of this session. So making sure that all those things are in place. Super important. And from a Microsoft perspective, the Copilot stack is something that we've been working on for more than a decade. So if you think about Azure and the supercomputer that we use to run things like ChatGPT as well as GPT models globally, all the way up through with the really important part on AI orchestration. So if you have to do multiple retrieval steps, find information across different data sources, that is also a real key area and key differentiation. And then the Microsoft apps, the Copilots that you build, the Copilots that we have in Copilot Studio to be able to extend that and be able to use Copilot with external data that might not be sitting inside of Microsoft 365. We're going to talk about all these different topics today. And so when you think about Copilot for Microsoft 365, think about it as 4 different things. So it's the large language model itself. It's Microsoft Graph and the data that's connected to it. It can be data that's in Microsoft 365, or you can do things like use Graph connectors to connect external data to it as well. Then it's the app experiences inside of Microsoft 365 apps. And something recently added is the ability to do grounding using web content for data sources from the web. You've probably all used different generative AI tools where there's a knowledge cutoff. Maybe it's September 2021 or last summer, and you ask it a new, more recent event, and it can't tell you that because it's past the knowledge cutoff date. Well, the web as a grounding source gets you past that block. So we've added that as an option. I'll tell you about all the controls that you'll have in IT in terms of making sure that the services are tailored to your organization. All right, so going back to the point with Gartner, making sure that, again, we've got the right tools and the right processes and approach in place for security, compliance, privacy, and responsible AI. And guess what? This entire session is going to be talking about all of these different topics. And again, this is going to be the first time that we've shown a lot of these different pieces of information and also demonstrations about how everything works. And so we want to make sure that we're answering a lot of your top questions. I know I've had a lot of questions as we've been developing so rapidly all the different Copilot tools. But how do we manage authentication? What's the identity access management story there? What's used in terms of how Copilot uses and returns sensitive information? Where is my data processed from a regional perspective? What types of admin controls are available to me if I'm an administrator and I want to tailor it to my specific industry or my specific use case? What can I do? And I think the big one, how do I make sure people are using it? I worked in IT for a long time. It's one thing to deploy the software and the different services, but it's another thing to get people to use it every day. So we want to make sure that you've got the right tools to be able to see if people are using it. So with that, what I want to do is actually bring up Ashish, and he's going to walk you through an amazing demonstration of how all this works and show data security and compliance in the context of using Copilot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Hello, everyone. Can I get a hello? Yay, it's lunchtime. We need to wake up. All right. So today we are going to talk about data security and compliance. And in the keynote earlier today, Rajesh mentioned how Copilot is enterprise ready. And a lot of this starts with how you treat your data. And treating your data right starts with understanding your data. Across the terabytes and petabytes of data that you have spread across, you need to understand what is sensitive and what is not, so that you know how your users' data is going to interact with Copilot. And a simple way to do that is to label it. So labeling, data classification are foundational to the way that Copilot will treat your data. And we're going to see demos of that today. The last, of course, is as a data strategy, you must have data loss policies in place. And this is where some of the tools that we provide are going to be super useful to you. This foundation is essential for your Copilot journey. Now, before I go into the actual demo, I'm going to do a little bit of grounding on what the demo is going to look like, because I'm going to do about 10 minutes of demos, and it's going to be fast forward on a lot of things. Let me set that context for you. So we are going to live in the land of Contoso Electronics, and I'm going to talk about Copilot's experience for two users, Alex and Diego. And I'm going to use data that's sitting in SharePoint for these two users, and I'm going to show the Copilot experience in Word. This is just the demo, and of course you can use a lot more than this. It's very quick for me to just talk about this right now. This is on the user side. On the admin side, I'm going to show you how the purview controls that you have in place are going to apply to these Copilot experiences as the users are interacting with them. And as an administrator, what compliance capabilities do you have to look at all these Copilot interactions and do the right thing to keep your organization safe and secure? One more setup for the demo. For the SharePoint side, we are going to actually focus on two different sites within the entire SharePoint infrastructure. The first is a site called Project Obsidian. It's a lockdown site, data is restricted, it's got special labels on it. Most importantly, Diego does not have access, Alex does. And this is going to show up in the way we are going to do our grounding, in the way that Copilot responds to the queries that we have put to it. The second site that we're going to reference is a general sales and marketing kind of site. Data is open to everyone in the organization. It is labeled, but no encryption is applied. All of these settings will matter, and I'll show you that in the demo. Okay, now with this grounding in place, Contoso Electronics, two users, SharePoint sites, let's actually see how all this works. Hopefully the demo gods will be with us today. Yes. So, all right, let's wait for it to pop up. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to talk about are the purview settings that help you ground your data correctly, identifying the right data, labeling them, and how does that impact the Copilot interaction. So let's go to the Purview portal, compliance.microsoft.com. Hopefully you should all know this. And the first thing that I'm going to point out is a set of classifiers that you have in place to help you look for sensitive data. And I have set up a classifier of my own called sensitive terms. And sensitive terms is looking for one specific thing. It's looking for the word obsidian, just to keep the demo simple. So wherever I mention obsidian, it's going to get classified as sensitive. And we're going to use the detection of this sensitive information in various places. Let's go to the next one. I have my labels set up within my organization. And one of the labels that I have is one called Project Obsidian, specific to this SharePoint site that I talked to you about, and data that's in the SharePoint site. So let's dig into this and show you what settings in there will matter to you. So let's click on this. The first is, of course, notice the color. This will show up in a few places. The next is, of course, encryption. Now, this is important. Along with the access control that is there in SharePoint, the access control as defined by the encryption will also apply. So if you have a document sitting in a SharePoint site that a user has access to, but the specific document has got permissions that the user does not have access to, Copilot will not summarize that content for you. So grounding includes the rights management encryption permissions here, all right? The second thing here that we're going to talk about is auto-labeling. Now, what I've set up is that obsidian term that I had as a classifier, I'm going to use that within auto-labeling to say, if you find that term anywhere, you're going to automatically apply this label to that content, and that label that gets applied is Project Obsidian, right? So I've set this up. Now I can go show you what Alex's experience is going to be. Alex has a lot of access to all of this. So let's see what Alex's experience is going to be like. Okay, so we are signed into Alex. And what we're going to check out now is Alex coming back from like a week-long vacation. He needs to get started on Project Obsidian. So let's find out. What is Alex going to ask? All right, let's see. To get caught up with Project Obsidian, I'm going to ask a question. What are the important documents in this project? Okay, so like I've been out, let's find out. Let's hit this. Let it do its thing, Copilot. All right. So Copilot has started generating the list of documents that it thinks are important for me as Alex to worry about and to like start my week. All right. Now let's talk about how Purview has integrated here and is helping keep your data safe and your users doing the right thing. The first is citations. Against every file that has been listed here, you can see a little number show up. And right there in the citation, you see the sensitivity label of the document that has been referenced. This is super important. So as your users are working with documents, okay, or not, let's get back in. So as your users are working with documents, they are going to see sensitivity labels show up front and center in their experience. And let's bring Alex back. A sec. Okay. Okay, there we are. All right. Yay. The second thing that you will see here is that the label changes depending on what file you're referencing. The first one was confidential Project Obsidian. The second is general all employees unrestricted. Again, your label, depending on the document, is going to show up in these citations. You will see the label also show up right here in the references. So for each file that is there, you're going to see the sensitivity label. Again, keeping your users honest about how they're referencing their data and what they're doing with this data. The third place that this is going to show up is right there in the chat. So because we are referencing sensitive documents, this sensitivity label is inherited to the chat itself. Which sensitivity label? The most restrictive one. So if you're referencing 5 documents and confidential project Obsidian is the most restrictive label on any of the files, that's what gets inherited to the chat. Again, we are doing everything we can to make sure your users do the right thing with their data and keep the data safe. Now this is great, but let's see what actual Copilot queries look like when you're working with it. So I'm going to switch to Word, as promised, and I'm going to start a new document. And I'm going to show you what happens when I reference a file in the context of a query. So I'm going to say, using e.g., I'm going to use this product specification, and immediately notice that this shield icon appeared here, which is an indication of the sensitivity of the file that you have just referenced. Short FAQ. Okay, let's see if this works. Notice that right at the top, the label is currently general. That's what you start with. That's the default label that I have. And as Copilot is going to do this thing, note how the sensitivity label changed to confidential. This is because the file that I referenced had this label on it, confidential, anyone unrestricted. So we are passing the sensitivity label from the source to the destination. So your data is always safe and secure as you're working with it. Users don't have to do anything, just talk to Copilot, work with your documents, and it'll tell you, due to the content you created, referencing the other file, your data is now correctly labeled. And this shows up again at the bottom, front and center, telling your users that sensitivity labels in your data is being handled correctly. All right, this is example 1. Example 2 of how this is going to work. I'm going to work on Project Obsidian now. So I'm going to write a short FAQ on Project Obsidian. Let's see what happens. Demo gods, one more time. There we go. All right, so as Copilot is going to do its work, it is going to see the output of Copilot and find sensitive data in there. In this case, I'm looking for the word Obsidian anywhere. And remember I had that auto-labeling rule set up? That kicked in and automatically applied the right label to the document. And this is important. Whether you are inheriting the label from the reference document or generating brand new content based on any number of documents that you may have in your environment, we are doing the right thing to keep your data safe. So Alex, as he's interacting in the experiences on the web or in the apps, it's getting the right thing done here, which is great. This is exactly what we want. Let's quickly switch over to what Diego might experience here and show you what that experience will look like. So I'm going to open Diego. We are signed in to Diego here. And first thing that I want to show you is Diego doesn't have access to Project Obsidian. So I'm going to access the site and it says, sorry, you don't have access. Just letting you know there. All right, but there are rumors about what Project Obsidian is about. So Diego is curious and is going to ask Copilot, can you get me some information? Tell me what Copilot is about. So let's ask. Let this load. You always love a little delay in everything. Or not. So let's give it a sec to come back. Hang on. All right, here we are. So let's ask that question. What is Project Obsidian about? And what we hope to see is that Copilot, knowing that Diego does not have access to Copilot, will say, I can't find anything. This is exactly what we want to make sure happens. Your data is safe, grounded to the user that is asking the question, right? So if Obsidian is something that Diego should not know about, Copilot is not going to find that answer somewhere in your organization and give Diego that input. This is exactly the kind of grounding we expect to keep your data safe and secure. Okay, so now we have looked at what Alex's experience is like and how data is safe and secure as Alex interacts with Copilot. We looked at how Diego has his experiences correctly grounded, safe and secure, the data is. So what's the admin side of the story? Let's switch over there and talk about that. Okay. For everything that is going on with Copilot, we want to make sure that the admins have complete visibility of what's going on. And that starts with audit. You can use the audit capabilities in Purview to look at every interaction that is going on. I'm going to pull up one to show you what that is like. Right here, you can see that the activity is called Copilot interaction. The user is Alex. And in here, you can see the set of files that were referenced along with their sensitivity labels. So again, sensitivity, front and center about everything that you're doing. So remember to go back and label your data with sensitivity labels. The important point here is that the actual chat content isn't in audit. This is just the activity record. The thread ID here, for example, is a pointer to where this data is stored, but the actual data is not here because this data, this audit record, goes to a SIEM, goes out of this compliant boundary. So you want to make sure that this interaction that you're doing with Copilot also remains within that boundary. Now let's talk about e-discovery. Imagine that I want to look at what Alex has been up to. Has there been any interesting kind of questions or prompts that Alex has made? So I have a case open looking at Alex's history. And looking at that review set, I can see exactly what Alex asked and what response came back. So this is perfect. This is exactly the kind of investigative experience I provide in Purview. As an admin, this is what I'm looking for. This extends to even communications compliance. If you have policies that flag for specific information or rules that you need your organization to follow, use communications compliance to also look at Copilot interactions and flag that. Again, enterprise-grade stuff, things that we just need to have in place, extend naturally from whatever policies you have today to Copilot. And last, of course, is retention. I have a specific policy already set up for Copilot interaction. And you can see that my policy extends the data retention from Teams chats all the way to Copilot interactions. So again, ways for you to do audit, e-discovery, data retention, and communications compliance, all for Copilot day zero. And this is what makes us enterprise ready. All right, with that, I'm done with my demo. Hopefully I proved to you that you can keep your data safe and secure and your administrators compliant in using Copilot. And I'm now going to hand it off to Ramesh to take it over from here.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's really hard when there's a cool demo and the demo gods were with us, right? So to an extent, but good. Glad the demos went well. So I'm going to talk about two particular things here today, right? First, we're going to talk about existing policies for M365 and how they apply to Copilot. And second, we're going to deep dive into the architecture of Copilot, see how data flows through the Copilot architecture, and also talk about some encryption details over there. Oh, I almost forgot to introduce myself. My name is Ramesh, and I'm one of the platform PMs for Microsoft 365 Copilot. In my role, I take additional responsibility for ensuring and protecting your data is secure. Now, that sort of makes the meat of my discussion here today with you. All right, let's dive into it. Because AI is new, I've heard a lot of questions from this very audience and a lot of our customers worldwide as to how do we maintain the privacy of M365 Copilot, your data in M365 Copilot. So I'm going to talk about it with 4 recommitted pillars from Microsoft, right? First, you control your data. This means that you should own and use and collect your data the way you want it. Second, you know where your data is located. Third, we secure your data at rest and during transit. Fourth, we defend your data. Microsoft reviews every legal demand to ensure that it only provides data pertaining to cases that come to us and ensure that only the right identifiers and users and accounts get access to that. Now, where does Microsoft store customer data? Well, in general, the storage location of your data depends on two factors. The first factor is where the tenant was signed up. And second, the available geographies where your services are available or M365 services are available. Let me give you an example. Let's say we have a Japanese customer who signed up in the Microsoft Japanese region, and now they have services like Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Exchange Online, as well as Microsoft Forms. Now, because Microsoft Teams, as well as Exchange Online, is available worldwide, is globally available, and Microsoft data centers are available in Japan, the data that gets processed by these services are stored in the Japan region. However, because Microsoft Forms is not deployed in the Japanese region, it is possible that your data gets processed in the North American macro region. Now, we'll talk about data residency. It's a type of commitment that we make on top of those defaults that we just talked about and applies to the location of data at rest. Microsoft 365 data at rest can include, for example, files that you upload to SharePoint or OneDrive tenant, Exchange Online mailbox, or Teams chat messages that you have. What does data in transit mean? There may be mail messages that are in the process of getting delivered, or Teams chat messages that are ongoing for a meeting that's going on right now. It's important to note that data residency does not apply to data in transit. Microsoft policy requires that both data at rest and data in transit be protected by one or more forms of encryption. In many regions, Microsoft 365 offers several choices for specifying where your data should be stored at rest. A full exploration of this is a 400-level course. I'm not going to go into that level of detail, but I'll call out two key points over here. First, all of these offerings cover data at rest for Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, OneDrive, and Microsoft Teams. ADR and EUDB each cover additional workloads beyond this. Second, while ADR and multi-geo capabilities are offered as paid add-ons, certain geos also have a limited set of data residency commitments written into the Microsoft 365 product terms. And EUDB goes a few steps beyond that. What does that mean? In addition to providing control over where data is stored at rest, EUDB terms provide commitments, contractual commitments for data processing as well as data in transit, as long as the sender and the recipient are within the EU. This applies to Copilot as well. Now, we've talked a little bit about M365 privacy and data residency commitments. Now, we'll talk about how that actually applies to Copilot. In line with our privacy principles, you control your data. Remember, I said this at the beginning of my talk here? Microsoft commits to not use customer data to train LLM and foundational models. This was one of the key questions that was asked to us many times, whether we train with your data. We do not. Our foundational models do not get trained with your tenant or customer data. All right, Microsoft 365 is upholding data residency commitments and as outlined in the Microsoft product terms and data protection addendum. There is no change to existing data residency commitments for our ADR customers. Now, ADR and multi-geo customers may use and benefit from Copilot, but the data location is not going to be displayed in our admin center. All right, now I'm going to walk you through 3 different scenarios, some of which I've already mentioned, but I'll go into specifics with this. Copilot, when you say responses from Copilot, such as generated documents, Ashish just showed you how to generate a document using Copilot, for example, and PowerPoint slides that you may create using Copilot, when stored in OneDrive, SharePoint, or Teams, or Exchange Online, keeps existing storage at rest for these services. Now, we want to take a look at a few Contoso customer scenarios of how Copilot data is managed. B Corp is a sign-up location in Belgium, obviously in EU, and will have all the data and processing done in the EU region. M Corp, now, is a company based in US and have data all stored in North America, and most of their data gets processed in North America, but could be processed anywhere. Now, Y Corp is a Japanese geo customer based in Tokyo, and their sign-up location is in Japan. Now, their data and processing happens as much as possible in the Japanese geo, but could be possibly processed in the North America region. And similarly, for any other corporation that is not in NA, North America, or EU, could have the same processing. Now, that's the end of my first part of the talk. Everyone still with me so far? Now, let's pivot differently, talk about Copilot architecture. Pick your favorite canvas, Word, PowerPoint, Teams, wherever you can start using Copilot. Now, in that canvas, you start entering a prompt, and that prompt goes to Copilot, the brain behind it, and that's where you get your queries get processed, right? Your input query, we call it user utterance, that path it takes is secured by WebSockets. And then any subsequent path it takes beyond service to service, et cetera, are all handled by HTTPS. Now, this stage, we call stage 2, we call it pre-processing, and the prompt goes through what is called grounding. What does grounding mean? You have data sources like Microsoft Graph, and the users see data that is in the Microsoft Graph. The authenticated user is scoped to documents and data that is already visible to them through existing Microsoft 365 role-based access. So they do not see anything more or less other than whatever they have role-based access controls for. In other words, based on the prompt and how Copilot needs the grounding information, it reaches out to the graph for your customer or tenant data, and sometimes it has to reach out to Bing, like how Jeremy had called out a little earlier, to get the latest and greatest from the web. Now, this information could also be extended to third party. I know a lot of audience here are very excited to talk about extensions. It is very similar in how there are third-party extensions available in Teams, and there are many apps in Teams from third party. Now, Copilot can get you access to your data in the Microsoft Graph with third party and Bing and provide everything to you at your fingertip here. Now, at stage 3, the grounding data and the modified prompts get sent to what we call the large language models. Please be aware, there are 3 things I want to talk about large language models. First, the large language model components, as you can see in the diagram here, are all inside the Microsoft 365 service boundary. Prompts, responses, and the grounding data that we generate as part of this are not used to train foundational models. I repeat, they're not used for training foundational models. We don't use it for advertising. We do not use it for any third-party development. Third, the private instance of Azure OpenAI is maintained by Microsoft. OpenAI does not have access to your data or our models. Now, we are on to stage 4. What does that mean? The retrieval of information that is referred to as retrieval augmented generation, RAG. You heard Satya say that RAG quite a few times today. It allows Copilot to exactly get the right type of information that you put in as input and then takes it to the LLM, and combining the user data that's retrieved from the knowledge base articles are now used to improve the prompt. This stage 2, 3, and 4 that I just described here iterate to then proceed to the next stage called post-processing. What does post-processing include? A few very important things. Responsible AI checks, which are automated and does not involve any humans in Microsoft to review it. Additional calls to Microsoft Graph for security, compliance, and privacy reviews, and command generation. You saw that in Ashish's section earlier, how your tenant admins have access to purview capabilities. To enable that, Copilot needs to slap on sensitivity labels to the content that get retrieved and responses that are coming through to the user. Now, this information also needs to get recorded for e-discovery, auditing, etc. All of that happens at this stage. Now, this is stage 5, where the user prompt, the response sent back to the user, and the citation links. You saw the references. He clicked on those numbers 1, 2, and 3, where you saw the sensitivity labels as well. All of this is stored. Please note that at this stage, it's similar to how and where some of your mailbox data, your Teams chat messages, are all stored in our M365 data stores. Also, I want to call out that when we store the user prompt as well as the responses, they are used in features that we have called sessions or history. Now, we've pretty much reached the last stage of it, where the Copilot returns the recommended response and commands back to the user, where the user can review and access the suggested response. In summary, Copilot iteratively processes, orchestrates, and gives you the sophisticated services to produce results that are relevant to your business because they are contextually based on your organization's data, the user data in your organization, the latest and greatest from the web, as well as third-party extensions, so you have it all from your favorite client canvas at your fingertips. Now, to tie it all back, your data at rest and during transit is encrypted to keep your data safe, compliant, and provide your admins the capability to control your tenants' data. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Jeremy to take you through the rest of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. You probably thought I was done. I'm not done yet. I've got some admin controls to show you in terms of how to configure Copilot as well. All right, so how do I prepare for Copilot then as an admin for my organization? Let's go through some of those concepts first. So you just saw information readiness is a big aspect to this, making sure that users are not over-permissioned, that you have the right level of data access for everyone. Copilot's not going to give you additional data access. It's always going to be in the context of what you, as a user, using Copilot, can actually reach. So making sure that all that works out and making sure that you don't over-index or over-permission anyone with too much access. There are lots of ways you can do that, and we've got, actually, this could be another 45-minute session on how to do that, but using SharePoint site audits, Purview, and other tools, you can actually do a lot to automate those processes. In terms of prerequisites, you have to make sure that people have the right plans in place for Microsoft 365, that you can actually consume Copilot. Once you've done that, you're going to want to make sure that from a client apps experience, that you're actually using the right versions of the client app. So you can use anything from preview builds through current channel, and as of December, monthly enterprise channel will also have the Copilot binaries in them, so you can use Copilot inside of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. All right, so something brand new is the Copilot page inside the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So what does that have? Well, that gives you the ability to configure all the different experiences. This is brand new. You probably haven't seen this yet in your portals. But basically, you can configure the experiences for things like Copilot in Bing, Edge, and Windows. You also have controls around data security and compliance. We covered that at length here today in terms of the things that you can do in Purview and other places. We also have, for plugins, the ability to configure where external data might be pulled from. You can use graph connectors and you can use plugins. One thing to note here, you have to opt in to be able to use plugins for Copilot, and that's something that you can do in terms of turning your tenant on to be able to use Copilot as an admin. Once you've done that, you can control which data people use and basically which people are allowed to access that plugged in or connected data. And so the last thing that we mentioned earlier in terms of web content, you have the ability to configure the setting as to whether or not Copilot can reach out to the public web and pull content for grounding, again, for recent events where maybe you want to grab content that's after the knowledge cutoff dates of the large language model training. All right, something else that we've set up is the setup guide for Copilot. Now, what this does for you is it kind of walks you through all the prerequisites I just showed and tells you what's going to be impacted from a services perspective so your users aren't surprised when you start deploying Copilot out to them, and then make sure that you have everything in place. That's part of the setup tools that are in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. You'll see Copilot for Microsoft 365. From there, once you get started, you can actually see exactly what different things we're going to be touching, different products and experiences, what to expect. And then when we look at the readiness, it's going to say everything from the apps, like I mentioned, making sure you have the right apps in place, that you're making sure that you're using Entra ID for your IDP, that you have OneDrive in place, because we're using retrieval augmented generation against OneDrive and SharePoint, things like Teams. Microsoft Loop, something brand new. As of today, even, there's a lot of announcements there. And then Semantic Index for Copilot, which you won't need to deploy. That's something that we do on your behalf. Then you can license users by group or by individual user. So here I'm selecting, for example, marketing team, and that way those users will get licenses for Copilot for Microsoft 365. Now, once you've done that, the nice thing is you can actually control the communications out to the different users that you've selected. So by default, we'll write you an email that you can modify, and you can also choose to send it to different people or additional people in addition to the ones you just licensed through the setup guide. And that's it. And once you've done that and you've basically configured the prerequisites, you've set everything up from the Copilot setup guide, you've got all the different things in place to have the different experiences light up for your users, and that will happen automatically as we provision those services on the back end. And so beyond that, and I come from an IT background, it's more than just, again, getting the services out there and deployed. It's about making sure that people are ready for it and trained and can use it, and you're getting the value from it. And so we've done a lot of work there, too, to make sure that you have the right tools to be able to get everyone to adopt and use Copilot. And then, from a usage perspective, something brand new that we're announcing this week is the Copilot dashboard. So this is going to actually give you information for readiness, making sure that you've got the eligibility in place, the number of active users, and everything that's in place for getting Copilot out and kind of deployed broadly. Then once you have all of the readiness figured out and sorted, and these are all things that you can do from Viva Insights, actually, then you have the adoption experiences also that you can manage. So here, you're looking at usage by the different app services and the different apps themselves in terms of endpoints, usage by Copilot features that you can track. Then looking at the impact. What exact impact are you having on meetings, on chat, on email, on documents, all of these things that you'll be able to monitor and see. And of course, additional news and research and related content that you'll be able to find to get more information and more things as they develop. So this is a always on, always iterating page that will continue to be updated with all the best materials. All right, so some of the key takeaways I want to impart with you. You saw label inheritance. You saw how the different compliance controls work with Copilot. All of these things that we're doing to make sure that your data is safe and that it basically abides by the same rules and the same governance that you've set for Microsoft 365. So this week, there's a lot of great Copilot content I encourage you to check out. On Friday, how Copilot works with Mary Pash. Today, extending Copilot and also building plugins, some of the external data things I mentioned earlier. And for next steps, there's a lot of different brand new content. And if you've got questions, we don't have time today for questions, but on the 5th floor, we have the Expert Hub, and I encourage you to go up there and ask the questions that you have. Thanks, everyone. That's all the time we have for. Now it's up to you.